I got the idea for the Constitution study while listening to a podcast reporting on the 2013 State of the First Amendment survey. While the First Amendment Center has not issued a survey since 2019, based on what I've been seeing lately, it's still worth investigating. So let's roll back the clock a few years, look at the state of the First Amendment, and then see if it's healthier in 2022 than it was in 2019. So we'll do that next on the Constitution study.
There's one thing you have to know wherever you make your stand. Came from a long through line of everyday Americans.
Hello there, everyday Americans, and welcome to the Constitution study, where we read and study the Constitution. We teach a rising generation to be free. I'm glad you could join me. As always, you can find out more at constitutionstudy.com. You can find the articles, the videos, the podcasts. You can find my radio program, my newsletter. You can request that I come speak to you or just ask me a question. All of it's there on constitutionstudy.com. And I'll talk a bit more about that and some other things at the end of this episode. But for now, let's take a look at the state of the First Amendment. I first became aware of the State of the First Amendment, or SOFA survey, in early 2014. Since then, I've reviewed the results every year until 2019, which is the last report on their website. The 2019 survey was conducted for the Freedom Forum Institution by Fours March Group. According to the report, the survey sample was designed to provide nationally representative estimates for adults 18 years of age or older. Now, we'll start with the participants' familiarity with the First Amendment. The first question the participants were asked is the same one that got me started with the Constitution study. As you may know, the First Amendment is part of the U.S. Constitution. Can you name any of the specific rights that are guaranteed by the First Amendment? How many rights are guaranteed by the First Amendment? How many of them could they name? While the 2019 responses were better than 2018, they're still not encouraging. 29% of those surveyed could not name a single freedom protected by the First Amendment. Now, this is the lowest number since I've been following the report, but you may notice that in 2018, that number was 40%, the highest I've ever seen. While a large percentage of respondents correctly named freedom of speech, a growing number of incorrect answers were also given, including the right to vote and to bear arms. The 2019 SOFA survey also found statistically significant demographic differences among those who could recall certain freedoms. Education was the most common predictor of recalling a First Amendment right. Participants with more education were more likely to recall freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and assembly. Another interesting question asked on the survey was if the respondents believed that the First Amendment protections go too far. In 2019, the number who agreed with that statement was 29%, up from 23% the previous 2 years. If a third of respondents can't name a single freedom protected by the First Amendment, and 29% of them think those protections go too far, what does that mean for those freedoms? There has been quite a controversy lately regarding cancel culture. What are the responsibilities of social media companies regarding the content posted by their users? Are there any legal liabilities for what their users post? The 2019 SOFA survey asked respondents if they agreed with the statement, social media companies violate users' First Amendment rights when they ban users based on the content of their posts. Even though they had just had the First Amendment read to them, a significant majority agreed with the statement. A majority of participants, 65%, agreed that social media companies violate users' First Amendment rights when they ban social media accounts. There was a measurable partisan split, with a greater percentage of Republicans, 71%, than Democrats, 62%, agreeing with the statement. Surprisingly, participants who recalled 3 or more First Amendment freedoms were also more likely to agree, 71%, with the statement than participants who recalled 2 or fewer freedoms, just 64%. The result suggests confusion about the application of the First Amendment protections on social media platforms. According to the survey, it appears the majority of Americans not only don't know what the First Amendment says, but they don't understand how to apply it. Even 71% of those who could name 3 or more of the rights protected appear to believe that the words "Congress shall make no law" means social media companies shall make no rules. Social media companies are not the only entities for whom the freedom of speech seem to be misapplied. Respondents were also asked if they agree with the statement, public institutions should revoke invitations to guest speakers in different scenarios. A majority of respondents think a speaker should be disinvited on the mere accusation of sexual harassment, the possibility of protest, or even if someone might be offended. This is commonly referred to as the heckler's veto. All it takes for someone's right to free speech to be infringed is for someone to claim they are offended or that it may cause others to act badly. As for the accusation of sexual harassment, notice it's based on the accusation, not the conviction. Anyone can accuse you of anything, but in America, you used to be considered innocent until proven guilty. Also notice that in each of these situations, those 18 to 49 are more likely to infringe on the rights of the speaker than those 50 and older. Now compare this with the statement, public school students should be allowed to report on controversial issues in their student newspapers without the approval of school authorities. Almost the same number of people who think someone should be disinvited by public institutions for discussing controversial subjects believe students should be allowed to report on them without approval. Even more think the students should be allowed to express their opinions on social media without being punished by their school. Do you see the hypocrisy? Compare how many people think the students should be allowed to express their opinions with the number who wish to deny speakers their right to do the very same. What about freedom of the press? How important do the respondents think that is? 72% agree that it is important for our democracy that the news media act as a watchdog on government. And 48% agreed with the statement that the news media tries to report on the news accurately and without bias. Not surprisingly, the reactions to the latter statement differ wildly between the two largest political parties, with 39% of Republicans agreeing compared to 56% of Democrats. This trend continued when the respondents were asked if they agreed with the statement, "The spread of fake news and misinformation on the internet is a serious threat to our democracy." While 77% agreed that fake news was a threat, the split was 84% for Republicans and 77% for Democrats. The last question asked on the SOFA survey involved freedom of religion. Respondents were asked if freedom of religion applied to all groups, even those that most people would consider extreme or fringe. 82% agreed. Even when broken down by the religion of the respondents, the differences were only a few percentage points. Only 5% of respondents strongly disagreed with the statement. So what is the state of the First Amendment? Well, this report is over 2 years old. I would say the overall health of the First Amendment is not good at all. But there is good news among the bad. Yes, 29% could not name a single right protected by the First Amendment, but that was the lowest percentage I've seen in the last 7 surveys. And while the percentage that could name a single freedom was down a few points, the number that could name 2 freedoms or more was up from 12 to 22%. There also seems to be a sentiment that students should be able to express themselves both in school newspapers and on social media without reprisals from the school. Compare that with the sentiments that the First Amendment goes too far and that those with potentially controversial opinions should be disinvited from speaking at public institutions. The opinions that social media companies are subject to First Amendment restrictions, even after having it read to them, shows a general lack of understanding. Are things better in 2021 than they were in 2019? I've certainly not seen any evidence to that effect. The good news behind this report is that it shows that many of the issues in our country are based on a lack of understanding of the supreme law of the land. Now, that may not sound like good news, but remember, as Thomas Jefferson said, "I know no safe depository of the ultimate powers of society but the people themselves. And if we think them not enlightened enough to exercise their control with a wholesome discretion, the remedy is not to take it from them, but to inform their discretion by education. This is the true corrective of abuses of constitutional power." That is why I started the Constitution study, so that we the people realize we can educate ourselves and that we must work to educate others if we wish to live free. Now, maybe you found this report depressing. Hopefully, rather than wallowing in what is wrong, together we can work to make it right. I know the idea of good news and bad news is pretty much a cliche, but I see it here in this report. The bad news is most people appear not to understand the First Amendment, even when it's read to them. And many of them don't know what it says to begin with. But the good news is we can fix that. A lack of education, general ignorance, can be fixed. It can be remedied. All it takes is a little bit of time and a little bit of effort and the willingness to try new things. Now, while the bad news is people still want to infringe on the rights of others, that also, I think, can be remedied as we begin to understand what it means to have freedom of speech, freedom of press, freedom of religion, freedom to peaceably assemble. As we understand that and how to apply that not just to ourselves but to others, I believe these issues can resolve themselves. The question is, will we do that? That is why I founded the Constitution Study, to help everyday Americans, everyone, men, women, children, read and study the Constitution, teach the rising generation to be free, so that they will know what their rights are, which we've seen in the First Amendment survey seems to be lacking, but also how they can better defend and assert them, which we also see lacking in the First Amendment survey. So while the state of the First Amendment doesn't seem to be really, really great, at least it points us to the answer of how to make it better. And you can join me. Again, head to constitutionstudy.com to share this episode. Share it with friends, share it with family. It's there for you freely to use and freely to share. Help encourage others to get involved. Maybe you want to join a Constitution study. I have a study going on online. Now you can try it out. You can take the Bill of Rights section absolutely free. You can find out more at constitutionstudy.com/study. You can find out what the study is and how you can try for free the Bill of Rights section. Maybe you want to become mentored. Maybe you want to learn more about how you can not only learn about the Constitution but teach. Well, there's a program on Constitution Scholars that will help you there as well. Maybe you just need some resources. Find them there. These are all available to you to help you become a better citizen, and hopefully to teach others to be better citizens. And if you think that's worthwhile, I hope to see you here next time on the Constitution Study.
There's one thing you have to know wherever you make your stand. Came from